I call upon Prime Minister to open the case. Here.
All right. Am I audible and visible?
Yep, you are both audible and visible.
Great. Thank you so much for the confirmation. Yeah, wait, let me set up my timer first. Okay, great. Several disclaimers I guess I have to make before starting this speech. I understand that this is going to be very philosophical and like maybe personal to every individual's like lives. So I apologize in advance if I do have like any sentences or phrases that may offend. Yeah. Starting in 3, 2, and 1. What I want as an individual is that I want to know what my purpose is. I know what I should develop, but not continuously seeking it, because I know that seeking it is completely tiring. Therefore, we're very proud to propose. I have 2 things that set up. Number 1, let's talk about like what does it mean to be forged as opposed to discovered. 2 things on this one. Number 1, the true meaning of life to begin with is something that is forged according to your environment and your personal self as to how you internalize the things that you've already experienced from your environment. This is empirically true because as human beings, we are social beings and we grow up according to the environment that they live in. This means that 2 things, right? Number 1, purpose looks like the motivation to live, your goals, etc., etc. This can be anything, so there is no epistemic access to determine what individual really, what each and every individual really wants, because it's obviously like according to their the way that they forge themselves. But number 2, I feel like even at the basic things like favorite activities, let's say that you like gaming, for instance, it's because you're forged by the environment that allows you to have the access to do gaming, and that you are actually truly enjoying something. Therefore, I feel like that this is that, yeah, exactly the true meaning of life. But number 2, like let's talk about like the comparative between discovery and forging, right? So discovery means that you're going to continuous like trial and error discovery of things. So if something doesn't fit you, for instance, you do run away with other things, right? But comparatively, when we talk about forging on the governments of the house, what we do is that, okay, there is a certain like goal that you're set upon, but what you do is continuously develop. What you do is continuously like shape yourself around to the conditions that you continuously live in, for instance, right? So yeah, that's the first thing regarding forge as opposed to being discovered. But framing number 2, understand that the objective of this debate is to prove whether or not this is empirically true. So if this motion reads that this house believes that this is a chair, we have to tell you why it's empirically true that this is a chair. So explaining the benefits as to why a chair is a telephone is not something that's important. As long as we prove to you why it is something that's completely important, they cannot just claim benefits and say that, oh, this is likely to happen, because a chair is not a phone and they function two different ways. I have one thing in my substantive, and this is going to be substantially like long. I'm going to talk about like why is this empirically true that life is forged as opposed to be discovered, right? 3 layers under this one. Number 1, what is the parameter to weigh and why is this argumentation important, right? We're going to prove to you why it's empirically true, why to begin with, humans from the mere existence of their lives, for instance, are necessarily forged to begin with, and that they're not like necessarily like their intentions or whatever they want to do is like not something that is being discovered, right? Second layer, and then why is this completely true? There are 6 layers to this one. Number 1, from the inherent process of evolution. What does this mean? I feel like in the process of evolution, humans evolve to adapt to the environment. The idea of evolution is something is important to be forged, and necessarily is important to be included as a form of forging the lives of humans today. So this means that the adaptation of human beings to begin with is already a form of empirical evolution that is according to the forging of like their lives, for instance. So like the development of things that is according to like every stage of life necessarily is because it's forged to them, and necessarily they forge it around them, they internalize it, and they have the motivation to want to, you know, create a better life upon themselves. But number 2, I feel like you have to understand that you get better at doing things. For instance, when you actually forge this, right? The philosophy in life that you usually see is how, for example, your efforts will never like betray the result of doing it. So understand that to begin with, the inherent meaning of people to live is to do something that they like enjoy, and they forge themselves around it. They focus to do their best on doing it. So necessarily their happiness is only able to be achieved, for instance, when they're able to necessarily like achieve the substantial happiness that they're going to, get at the end of the day from like continuously forging themselves. But number three, getting happiness through what you're fighting for is something that's empirically better, because understand the moment that, for instance, like debaters are able to pass through like the world's competition, for instance, this is something that they actually, the sense of fulfillment that they actually get to begin with, this is something that they feel like is something that they should do. So I feel like to be like this is empirically true, and this is something empirically better. If you want to compare this to people continuously finding their discovery, sure, they may get something in the short term as to their escape to their like true forged selves, for instance. But I think that the level of happiness that they get is just comparatively very, very different. But number four, you have to understand that what humans do in the current status quo, the reason as to why humans do things in the current status quo is because to begin with is something that's forged. Why is this true? Because understand that the reason as to why people have purposes in life is because something is expected to them, and they internalize it by thinking that they are expected to do things by society. This means that when you are that you are most likely forged by your surroundings, for instance, and then you also force yourself to forge it. So this looks like, I think that if people are internalized to become doctors, or they think like they become doctors, for instance, I feel like to begin with, they see that their environment is something that needs the urgency of like healthcare services. They understand the importance of healthcare. So therefore, what they try to do is try to develop themselves continuously, forge them exactly because A, society necessarily shapes them to think like that, but B, I feel like they also force themselves to be able to not feel the expectations that they actually like impose upon themselves as their form of self-motivation. But number five, let's talk about trial and error, which is like most likely what the opposition is trying to bring, right? So they most likely what they're trying to do in their case is like championing the existence of like trial and error, and exactly why they want to do a form of discovery. We're going to tell you why this isn't true because of two faults. Number one, I feel that in current status quo, trial and error is not working because like the logical assumption when you do discovery is that when you try other things, you become happy. But then after that, when error happens, you are habituated to leave out. When you feel pain, for instance, for not being able to achieve a certain goal, or to be able to or to at least fail one trial or two trials, etc., then most likely what you're habituated to do when you try to continuously discover is like you have to opt into other places, for instance, which is uncertain, right? And you have no epistemic access to determine when is it going to end at the end of the day. But number two, I think that other than that, as to the reason as to why trial and error is something that necessarily is untrue or isn't something that's to begin with accessible to a lot of human beings, is because like every single person have necessarily different accesses towards what necessarily they should do, or have different accesses to what they should discover at, for example, right? So most likely when you're more privileged comparatively to the underprivileged, then you have a different level of trial and error that you can do. Necessarily discovering something is not within like the inherent traits of being human, because it doesn't include all people, for instance, from like different backgrounds. But lastly, six, humans are social beings. Preferences are interacted with and manufactured by the social environment. Prerequisite for happiness is having to share with them with other people. Usually, so necessarily when you become a doctor and you're happy about them, then most likely happiness are also going to be spread because people know that they're happy and they're assured that there is doctor, for instance. Here, we share the happiness empirically larger on our side of the house. But thirdly, even if they find it beneficial under opposition, why is it true and unlikely? Four things. Number one, at the end of the day, we've proven to you why it's true that people are, born to be forged. But number two, I feel like on their side of the house, they opt into things that are necessarily uncertain. They opt into unknown enemies. I think that comparatively on our side of the house, we know the enemies of the things that we're going to forge, for instance. So if we know that you want to pursue a debating career, then obviously they know that what they have to improve in the process of forging themselves. But number three, I feel like on their side of the house, you're continuously habituated to escape. This is empirically harmful because you don't feel substantial happiness and you don't feel eternal satisfaction. But number four, you feel in control in your life, under our side of the house, because you can forge it under our side of the house. Under their side, they're continuously going to be given options, therefore continuously questioning themselves whether or not this is ideal to them. Very proud to propose.
Thank you, Prime Minister. To opposition, leader of opposition.
Hi, am I audible?
Yep, you are audible.
Am I audible?
Yep, you are audible.
Okay, setting up my timer real quick. Hi, my name is Kukuh. Pronouns is he, him. A few disclaimers. I'm sorry if I said anything wrong about your personal life choices. No means to offend anyone in this debate. Yeah. Okay. Beginning my speech. If my voice is somehow robotic, just feel free to cut me out. Begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. Understand that even government concedes that you are constrained by the surrounding, that you are forced by your surrounding, and whatever happens, you need to follow your surroundings, and there is no way for you to actually express yourselves the way you want to. Right? A few rebuttals before moving towards my case. First, on the idea of humans are forged, right? We don't think that humans are inherently forged. We believe that humans are inherently discovering something, right? What does it look like, right? This looks like, for example, when you are a toddler, you are told to hang out with your friends or try new things, right? So at the end of the day, we do think even humans are also inherently discovered by nature, right? But secondly, on the idea under theirs of the house, they have the control of their life, right? We don't think that will happen, right? Why? Because I said that there are so many externalities that will happen, right? We believe that considering that the world is always changing and that there's too many externalities, the control of your life cannot be achieved under both sides of the house, right? But what do we want here as an opposition, right? We want to make sure that humans are continuously discovering something, right? But we do think that we appreciate all discovery, even if it is a small one, right? But even if, for example, you fail to discover something, we do think that it's okay because at least other people can still follow your discovery, right? But moving towards my speech, right? Four main argumentations. First, why not 3 main argumentation? First, why not everyone have the capacity to forge? And second, why motivation will be better under ourselves thus? And lastly, why it will bring more choices at the end of the day. Let's talk about why not everyone have the capacity to forge, right? Understand that we need to weigh this argument, considering that we are the ones who are protecting the vulnerable actor, right? What does this mean, right? Understand that under this of the house, it will create a standard, right? Why? Because it means when you forge something, you need to create something perfect, or at least something that is very, very good, right? Understand not everybody have the same starting point, right? What does this look like, right? This looks like, for example, underprivileged people who are forced to follow the standardizations of someone who is more privileged, right? Therefore, at the end of the day, these underprivileged people who don't have the same starting point, who don't have the same capabilities, are now forced under their side of the house to actually follow a more privileged people, right? We don't think you don't have the capacity to do that, right? But why under discovery it will be way more equal? Why? Because under our side of the house, discovery means everything is treated equally, right? Even if you discover something, what do we mean here by discovery? Is, for example, you discover your spouse, or for example, you discover your life, your purpose of life, or you discover your choice of career and whatnot, right? We don't care. We just want you to keep discovering, right? But understand, under our side of the house, the standardization is not that high, right? And the standardization is not that high as in a government, right? Because on this side government, not only you need to find something that you need to pursue all your life, but you also need to forge it to become something that is so perfect that is equal towards the standard of the society itself, right? But moving towards my second argument on the idea of motivation, right? Well, understand that under ours of the house, people have more motivation. What does it look like, right? This looks like, for example, people want to follow, for example, the idols, right? Understand, most likely, people who discover something are more famous than people who for something to become perfect, right? Well, this looks like, for example, Newton discovered discovering graffiti and whatnot, right? This shows to you that people are more willingly to actually follow the grades, right? To follow to discover something that so that they can be appreciated by society at the end of the day, right? Understand that underside government, when you force something, more likely than not, there's no society will not remember you because you already did something. You already did something that someone already has done. Therefore, you don't have the incentive to do so itself, right? It is more intuitive to discover something. It looks like, for example, discovering space and whatnot, right? It looks like, for example, people inherently will think, discovering something, it is way more cool. It is way cooler, right? It looks like, for example, it looks like, for example, people trying to find new things, right? Or people adventuring new things and trying to do something that people have not done, right? This shows to you that people are inherently willing to discover more things at the end of the day, right? But on the other side of the house, we believe that because of the more motivation, we believe that improvement will be better, right? Because on the other side of the house, improvement will still exist, right? And it will be better, right? Considering the underside of government, what does the improvement will look like? It looks like, for example, you improve to actually cater towards the society standards, right? So the moment you follow the society standards or you already achieve the standard, there is no incentive for you to actually improve more, right? Because you already finished what you have tried, what you are trying to do, right? For example, you already becoming the first champion of WSDC or WDC. You don't have an incentive to continue debating, right? But on the other side of the house, there will be constant improvement, right? This looks like, for example, you are trying more passions, you are trying new things. For example, after winning, for example, you join soccer and whatnot, right? There will still be purpose for you to continue living or to continue improving yourself because there are still things that you haven't discovered in your life, right? I will at the end of the day, it is impossible under us of the house to discover everything, right? We will that is beneficial because there is no limitations on discoverability, or there will be no limitations on improving yourself, right? But lastly, why it will bring more choices, right? Understanding the constant quo, people, especially minorities, don't have enough choices, right? It will be worse under side government, right? It's underside government. What does this look like, right? Because it will look like, for example, people don't have the capacity to try new things, right? It looks like, for example, you are not allowed to join, for example, a soccer club or to join art school and whatnot, right? Because that is not what the society is trying to portray or the society wants, right? Even government says, you will be fortunate by your surrounding society, right? The society doesn't care about what you want. They only care about what do they want at the very first place, right? Therefore, at the end of the day, your choices doesn't even matter. The only thing that matters is only the choices of this. The only choice that matter is the choices of the society, right? This will worsen, especially in minority, right? Because understand, we have even if the society is against you, at least you have the incentive to discover more things. For example, discover your sexual identity and whatnot, right? Therefore, people, for example, in minorities who are always stereotyped have the incentive to try more, right? Because they want to discover more, right? And so under their side of the house, for example, if you come from a rural area, more likely than not, you will only focus on becoming a farmer because you want to forge yourself, right? But even if on the other side of the house you choose a wrong choice, you choose something that is wrong, at least you have the incentive, or at least you have the capability to actually find new things, right? Understand, under side government, but when you follow something, you are stuck in that. You are stuck down in that, and you will follow that for the rest of your life. At least on the rest of the house, we believe that even if you follow something that is at the very first place is wrong, you have the chance to actually discover something and to follow another route, right? It is impossible under side government, right? But moreover, at least it gives more POV, right? In the current problems, right? For example, it will look like, for example, the governments of the world finding more renewable energy path in the form of gold classification rather than following the traditional renewable energy path, right? It shows to you that under side of the house, we don't follow, even the government will not follow what is the current meta or the current trend, right? It gives a more POV to actually help other problems, right? Under their side of the house, they just want to follow the problem with what is the current trend. There is no flexibility. So proud to propose. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader of Opposition. Continue to government, calling Deputy Prime Minister.
Can we hear?
Yeah.
Okay. Just give me a sec. Okay. Yeah. Like obviously no like. Okay, wait, what was I saying? Okay, so I don't mean a lot of the things that I mentioned in my speech is purely for the purpose of this debate. Like it might be generalizing in some instances, but I don't really mean a lot of the things. It's just for analytical purpose. This house has been asked a true or false question. In all instances, we opt or believe against believing something that is factually untrue and believing that something that is false is true. What that side of the house gives you is that we can believe in incorrect things insofar as it brings utility. We propose, on the other hand, that not only one, you are impermissible to believe in incorrect things insofar as that's the question that is being asked in the house. But also, secondly, even if you want to take the debate into a utilitarian perspective, we're going to win in that characterization as well. So we win in both fronts. Two pieces of framing before that. The first thing I want to talk about is I honestly could not believe that I heard the ridiculous news.
Hi, Justin. I'm so
Yeah,
sorry.
sorry.
I think we
Okay.
need to wait for Mbak Astrid.
Hi, so sorry. Suddenly it and the Wi-Fi acting up. Can we restart? Because my connection got spared at like 20 seconds. I'm so super sorry.
Okay, Mbak Justin, are you okay with that to repeat your speech from the start?
Okay, sure. Yeah. Okay. This house has been asked a true or false question. In all instances, we ought or against believing something that is factually untrue or believing that something that is false is true. What that side of the house gives you is that we can believe in incorrect things insofar as it can bring utility. We propose that not only that ours are more correct, but even if they want to misidentify the burden and bring this a bit to utilitarian perspective, we will win on their characterization as well. That being said, I'm going to address two issues in this speech. The first is that I'm going to reassert the 6 empirical evidences that we pulled to them. Largely are responded by their side. That's the losing point in opposition. But secondly, what should we believe in? What world should we believe in? And whether those world is going to bring like larger utilitarian value to our side. Before that, though, two pieces of framing. The first thing I want to talk about is that I honestly could not believe that I literally just heard a ridiculous Newton example. This debate is probably not about forging or discovering new things. Like, look at the wording, right? It's be forged or be discovered. That shows a passive voice. I can't believe that I'm teaching basic English. But the point is that the purpose of your life is to be forged by your society and by your own internal understanding of what you ought to do in this world, rather than discovering it being pre-assigned to you by a random factor, for example, that you have no control over. So that's the comparative to this debate. Do not let opposition skew that. But secondly, right, this is not a narrative debate. I think some of the anchors are in this room. They did not praise the motion that this house believes that the narrative is this being forged or discovered, like Grace Proham then quote. The debate asks you a question on which is correct. Our side addresses that question, their side does not. Let's start with an empirical evidence on why this is correct. And I want to note that this is already independently debate winning because of two very important reasons. Number one, in a debate about whether or not a fact is true, the only burden for teams to prove is to prove the trueness based on the empirical observation of the pre-existing samples of the observation, right? For example, if I want to say that this house believes that this is a chair, it doesn't matter if I believe that, believing that it's a chair brings me utility or not, or believing that it's a phone brings a better utility. The only burden that I have to answer to an average reasonable person, if I'm talking to like a fucking 5-year-old on the street, is to say that that fulfills the component of it being a chair. That's the only burden that we prove. In our side, we win. So the idea of following the rich people, following the majority and all of those stuff should probably be secondary, if not unimportant. But secondly, the definition of purpose for individuals is different. And I intend to keep it that way. So we ought follow that kind of definition that I think TM said. Because necessarily you don't have the epistemic access to define someone's preferences or what someone considers to be their purpose in life. Insofar as we prove why we are more correct in the vast majority of instances and for the vast majority of people on what they probably consider to be their purpose, we win, because that's the only metric of weighing that is available from the epistemology standpoint, right? The others are either incoherent, incorrect, or fickle, insofar as they're going to be based on information that you cannot necessarily know based on the fiat that is provided in the motion. All of their practical argumentation is clear and benefit then. It's based on something that you necessarily cannot understand based on the limited wording in the motion. You have no epistemic access to explain, for example, how people perceive this kind of narrative in their side. 6 evidences that we showed to you in Gov on why we win. The first is that the first thing that we claimed was the process of evolution. We told you that individually humans can adapt, and that showcases that they are, even from a biological standpoint, from a morphological standpoint, humans are already adaptive. Humans are already forced out there by their environment to change, to survive. That's why it negates completely, perfectly the result from their side of, it's affected by externalities. So exactly right. I think humans even change even biologically and morphologically because of this externality. But it also negates opposition assertion that humans do not have the capacity to force their purpose. Not only that empirically humans have the capacity, but also the purpose is probably not, higher than humans' capacity to begin with. So humans cannot necessarily find a purpose that is higher than what they can probably achieve in either side of the house. Insofar as that understanding is true, we believe that we have the capacity to do that. The second thing we proposed was humans that empirically get better by doing something. Well, let's talk about this. Think of it this way. Most successful people are the ones who have spent a lot of time and effort on believing, on trying, on grinding, that they believe that they can do this certain thing. Philosophies like getting better by doing. Philosophies like results do not betray the process. Philosophies like hard work beats talent when talent fails to work hard are all derived from this understanding of human empirical, on this empirical observation of how humans particularly behave. The third thing we talked about was happiness. We told you that happiness is much more substantial because the happiness that you gain after you go through, lots of hard work to particularly achieve something is substantially larger compared to the happiness that you get finding new things. But even if you were to develop the happiness part, it's a sense of accomplishment that is the tipping point, right? You feel like you gave your fucking life up for this, for example, rather than finding new things. No comparative on happiness and pain in their side. The fourth thing is that humans are not born with pre-existing biases, and this is important. Biases are manufactured out of necessity, but also by the preferences of your surrounding and yourself. So when they say that, you follow rich people, this sounds populist, but don't buy this just yet, because the prerequisite for you to be able to discover your own preference in their side is not only that it is random, but also you ought to believe that you have the widest amount of choice possible. We posit therefore that you probably do not have that, insofar as the media that manufactures your preferences are probably still controlled by the rich, who probably will still get you to discover your preferences to be following what they ought, what they need to begin with. So insofar as they cannot prove why the media is going to be completely unbiased, they cannot win in this part. The fifth thing we told you was the trial and error as a process of finding, discovering new things just empirically doesn't work. Because the first thing I want to posit is that happiness that you find in one place is not comparable to the happiness you find in another place. So, that's confusing. Let's say you're working in A, right? And then you want to find a new purpose by working in B, C, D, E. The happiness that you can find in A, B, C, D, E is going to be largely the same. There's absolutely no comparatively higher happiness that you might achieve in different workplaces. Because in order to get happiness, you need to go through a lot of process. You need to go through a lot of pain. But once you face one pain, you leave that workplace, you move to the other place. Meaning that you don't have access to begin with to reach the happiness to begin with. But secondly, also that's not accessible to a lot of people, right? Insofar as we have to debate on the largest, widest definition of purpose as possible, meaning we cater to the widest variety of population as possible, we ought to believe that something that is not accessible is not correct. But lastly, humans are social creatures. Preferences are manufactured by your surrounding, as I said. But more importantly, happiness is often substantial with others. Not that a lonely person cannot be happy, but factually, happiness gets exponentially larger when you share it with other people, when you can laugh, when you have a beer together, all those stuff. The response that we get was that society doesn't care about you. Not only that this is empirically untrue, insofar as society communalized, foreign civilization motivation to help one another. But logically, that also cannot be true, right? There, at best, you have the selfish interest not to be selfish, insofar as lives are much like still largely interdependent one another. You need one person for your needs, and the other person probably needs you as well. So probably selfish society doesn't exist. The second thing I want to talk about is what should we hope for and what should we believe for. We posit three things. The first is that you have to believe in the true statement. We have to believe that the ice melts into water and the sun rises from the east, because that's necessarily what makes us human. But secondly, we should believe for a better pursuit, for a better world morally. We posit that you have better agency in our side because of two reasons. Number one, you have no symmetry of information at all in their side. You have no knowledge of the new thing that you're gonna be able, you're gonna try to discover. Like, if you move to another workplace, you don't know necessarily whether or not the amount of pain or suffering and happiness that you might get in the new workplace or the new purpose that you're trying to discover is larger compared to the existing one. So you have no sense of information. But secondly, you have no sense of control. You feel like you don't know what life is for. You feel like you rigorously, are pre-assigned randomly and arbitrarily with a purpose that you do not consent to do. You do not consent to have to begin with. So the problem is that farmers will be farmers, then they ought to run the counterfactual, and farmers will be able to opt out anyway. But lastly, it's not positive utility. So the thing we got from their side was that, oh, you will be able to improve. What we told you was that you get better by doing. You have no incentive to improve in their side, because if you fail in something, you run away. You will never be successful to begin with. And that's already the requisite for their case to run. But then they said, but when you win worlds, you have no purpose anymore. You have no epistemic access to do that, to say that, right? If winning world is someone's purpose in life, you probably should allow them to explore that. But necessarily, if that is not their purpose in life, they will be able to, continue to work on different places as society and as themselves necessitate them to survive in this particular world. And so far, like, what we proved to you was that not only that this is true, but even if you want to misidentify the burden and talk about the narrative standpoint, we still win. For all those reasons,
Thank you, DPM. Continue to opposition, Deputy Leader of Opposition.
Am I audible?
Yep, you are audible.
Okay. Give me a few seconds. My gender pronoun he or him. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. This house believes that one purpose in life therefore as opposed to be discovered. We believe that this debate should talk about one purpose is something that justified to establish and how it impacts the society. Since the government play in the scenario when this debate is talking that those purpose is true or not, I think this debate should go to opposition. But even if it yes, even though it's not our burden, let's be cherry picking why it's not something that true at the end of the day. Two reasons. First, we believe that people action will at the end of the day based on their free will, based on their discovered thing, based on this contributive incentive at the end of the day. Why is that so? Because we realize even though there is any limited amount of choice, even though you are swayed by the narrative coming from society, but at the end of the day, the one who choose, the one who decide your decision is you, right? Means that at the end of the day, we will giving all this ability to someone who have to discover the decision at the end of the day. So we realize that those purpose is not true. But even if it yes, they say that it's something that correct because of the comparative is something that harmful, we say it's still okay for you to conducting trial and error and so far and so on. Why is that so? Because it's part of your journey since you do it based on your consent at the very beginning with. This is something that we want at the very beginning with. How then, even though it's something that harmful, even though it's spend a lot of money, it's something that okay because you rely on those conditions, you enjoy those kind of condition. We say it's still something that are beneficial. But it is the comparative in there. The comparative inside of the government team, you will cannot conducting something that you demanded at the very beginning with. Every single decision that you made basically under the prerequisite of society. Yes, might be it will be easier for you to get this access, but at the end of the day, you cannot enjoy this process because basically you don't want at the very beginning with. This is why we believe that those proposals goes to someone who are discovered, to someone who try to conducting self-satisfaction, to self-exploration, and contributive to society. My another rebuttal will be integrated on my speech. What I'm going to talk to you on my speech, two things. First, why it will hampering the movement toward the minority group, but secondly, what is the comparative? Why discover thing is something that much more beneficial inside of opposition there. Let's jump to the first one. Why it will hamper the movement toward the minority? Since the burden come from the opposition is to prove to you why those proposed is not something that justify and it creating a bad impact towards society. We say we give some contextualizing. Two things. First, in government side, minority will be simply coerced to fulfilling the majority demand, since every single decision that they made is following by the desire or following by the narrative that exists in society, that most of them are majority. But second, we say that some certain people have limited access of choice, since every single choice has been manipulated by the majority, because the majority is someone who have the power at the end of the day, and those people cannot oppose it because at the very beginning it become their purpose. We say it's no longer beneficial. But why it hampering the movement toward the minority? Two reasons. First, how minority will react by focusing their self-interest to fulfill the societal standard, right? Because when we say that something that might be hard to achieve, since you have only limited choice to that limited choice that you have, that we say is no longer beneficial, is simply because you have a lot of disadvantaged condition, right? But second, we say that it will less intention for those minority to following their desire, since if they're conducting it, they will be blamed from the majority, because of it creating a new narrative that you should following every single thing that exists in society. But how those two conditions is something that are very harmful at the very beginning. Let's jump to the first one. We say it will be very hard for them to fulfilling or getting their interest to do so. The narrative that creating is because some from its purpose mean that it will very hard for you to following demand. It will very hard for you to fulfilling your interest because of you just following the demand come from your environment. This is something that government team try to obey because of it creating much more benefit and so far and so on, right? But we say it's not always something that you want at the very beginning with. Yes, even though you are able to play a game because of you have the access in there, because of your family support you, but basically within it, it's not your concern, it's not your desire. We say it's not creating a happiness that exists, right? You cannot enjoy the process. It will creating much more suffer for you. You cannot creating satisfaction toward your interest. For example, you will sacrifice much more desire that you have at the very beginning with. We say it's not something that are beneficial. But even if it yes, the government team will say that, oh, you will get your happiness after this later when you can enjoy the process and so far and so on, when you meet your friend and so far and so on. We say that those standards is too harmful for some certain people because two reasons. First, we say that minority will have limited access, mean that when those purposes exist, it will only create a benefit toward some certain people who are highly privileged at the very beginning with. We say it's not something that justify and fair to do so. But what is the comparative in that? The comparative is how then we as opposition will creating more contributive action. We want people purpose is on how they would like to discover their desire based on their free will, because of we believe that the most just purpose in our life is to contribute towards society. For example, we say it's much more beneficial because it's not necessarily for you to give up your desire to someone who are basically oppress you at the very beginning with by all this narrative, for example, right? But why then those conditions is beneficial at the end of the day? Two reasons. First, we can admit and give those minority individual chance to proposing their free will, to proposing their desire at the very beginning with. Is something that are only exclusive inside of opposition team, since we are give you more because give you the purpose of discover, right? But second, we can impose the individual purpose to more contribute toward their community. It's something that are very important because those minority is someone need support each other. There's someone who are very prompt at the very beginning with. How then those interests to contribute is something that are very important to do so, right? We say it's much more beneficial and exclusive inside of the opposition team. But why those two benefit basically is something that are important. You should understand that those free will lead to the try and error, will lead to higher degree journey of life. You will face a lot of struggle in there. You will feel understand the journey of life. You can enjoy the failure that you have and learn about this, right? We say it's much more justify for you to feel those kind of condition because we realize it's only one choice for you to get the enjoy that you have at the very beginning with, right? Because we believe it's something that are much more important for you, even though you fail at the end of the day, but at the very least you have been consented to it toward those fail rather than you just following the desire come from society. All those reasons very proud to oppose.
Thank you, DLO, to government team, government whip.
Hi, am I audible?
Yep, I think you're audible.
Wait, give me like 5 seconds. Okay. First of all, just like a quick disclaimer and trigger warning. Everything that can be found in my speech is only for the sake of this debate. It might be a bit sensitive. I'm sorry for that. Okay. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, and it's amazing how opposition can frame this debate to a majority versus minority debate, right? However, unfortunately, this is not what the debate wants or the burden that is important to be answered. We think they should lose this debate, right? Two clashes in my speech. First, I'm going to talk about how about which one is which side actually give like a reason for this to be empirically true. The second, I'm going to talk about which one is actually more beneficial for the people, right? Let's talk about the first clash first regarding the whether or not it's true, right? I think my first speaker and second speaker has already framed to you as to why this is the most important burden in this debate. I think by us already explaining to you why it's empirically true for life purpose to be forged is something that should make us win the debate, right? We have proved to you 3 things. First, we told you about how human inherently is a result of a process. Theory of evolution, theory of nurturing, psychology, criminology all tell us that you were forged by the environment, by your parents, by what you read, by everything that you experience in your life, right? This is enough to tell you that even what you think and how you perceive your life purpose come from a process of forge and reforge, right? But second, we told you about how trial and error is a prerequisite for you to figure out your life. It's not something that will be available in opposition because what you want is discovering, you want is a constant click, constant finding out what purpose that already reassigned to you before you even born to this world. This is not something that is accessible in their side of the house. Within trial and error is more feasible and is something that will be it is something that is empirically true for you to figure out your life. We prove that to you, right? But lastly, we told you about how humans are a social being. So presumably you will need to constantly seek for other people's contribution to your life. You discuss to them, you talk to them, you learn from them. Within something that is empirically true in our side of the house, that it forces you to figure out what you want to do with your life, right? Let's evaluate what they told us in this particular class, right? 2 things. I don't think they actually engage to that particular line of logic, right? I don't think they do, but even if they do, I think it's like a pretty much like one-liner arguments, something that only rebut the assertion of our arguments, without necessarily talks about the logic behind our arguments. I don't think they engage at all to our arguments, right? So don't credit that on this particular class, right? But second, let's assume that they engage to us even when it's just assertion, right? They told us about how, oh, human will still try to do trial and error, human will still try to discover things to, as well in their side of the house, right? we don't think this proves to us as to why it's empirically true that people discover and not forge their life purpose. I don't think by them answering this actually prove to us the comparison and the counter factual, the counter explanation in their sort of house, right? So you should not credit what they said in this particular class regarding the first class, right? But second, whether it's also backlashing their own characterization, right? Within the moment you try again, and when what you did is a trial and error, you do the same thing even when you failed, for example, you let yourself being forged by that failure, right? You let yourself being forged by that experience, right? So within the externalities that made you fail, in their other house will also force you as an individual, right? Within this backlashing their own proposal, their own characterization, because the moment they want to opt into a trial and error, the moment they want to like do something that they want without trying to discover, without trying to do other things, this also mean that you're wanting to being forced by experience, right? So within this is also backlashing the characterization regarding discover. So within that we went the first class to begin with, right? But let's just move on to the second class regarding which one is actually more beneficial, right? Within this is something that they talk more in this debate, even when within that the most important class is the first class. But let's just engage for the sake of engagement, right? They told us about how underprivileged people will feel like they have to follow privileged people, right? Several responses to this. First, I don't think life purpose is the same like with a trend or like a beauty standard, right? I think on both sides of the house, everyone will have their own life purpose and it will always be special to them, right? Whether it's serving the religion, be very rich, be a superstar and whatnot, it will always be special to each and every individual, right? So please just scrape that opposition characterization away from your note because I don't think it's relevant to begin with. Second response, for the sake of engagement, right? Let's just break down their argument, right? I think in most of the time, people do not expose their life purpose. Even when you're very popular, for example, you don't even talk about it to your own fans and whatnot. There is no prominent discussion regarding life purpose in current social media, for example, so we don't think that's actually true, right? But we think even when there is a discussion, we think it will be a segmented discussion. This is like when people talk about hobby, right? Privileged people will probably talk about doing golf or riding horse, while middle to lower economic class people will segment it to a more general sport like basketball or football, right? This segmentation is not within the concern of these people or like underprivileged people, and so far they stuck in their own echo chamber, right? I.e., middle class people will talk about basketball to their friends without having the pressure to talk about sport like horse racing and whatnot, right? So we don't think there is actually a pressure coming from privileged people to underprivileged people to follow them or anything, right? But next response, right? Even if we have to bite the bullet, we think there is at best inexclusive, right? Because in order for you to access your life purpose, you still need resources, right? It means you need to explore more things, and by wanting to explore more things, you need money, opportunity, and supporting family and whatnot, right? So within, at best, then this is inexclusive in their sort of house because these underprivileged people will still have to, have like different starting point, and even if they want to discover things, they also need resources and whatnot. We don't think this is exclusive to begin with. But last response on comparison, right? Which is likely to be better in our side of the house because even when you are underprivileged and have lower starting point, for example, you will feel special because you know the life purpose you have is special to you in your life, as special as it entails from your own experience, your hardship, your failures, and whatnot. On a position, then you don't feel special because you feel like failure because regardless of the pre-existing purpose that has been assigned to you and waiting for you to discover it, you might not be able to do so because you don't have the resources to begin with, right? So if you want to compare the benefit, we think that even on both sides of the house, people underprivileged do not have the same accessibility like privileged people. We think at the very least, we can still give like the emotional fulfillment for these underprivileged people that they are special regardless of their resources, right? They're special because it's forged by their own experience and by their own uniqueness and not pre-assigned to them as what happened in opposition, right? But next, opposition also argue that as people will feel less motivated in government side of the house. To respond to this, first, we really don't understand what this argument means, right? We don't understand why forging life purpose makes you feel less motivated. And so far that they see other people, for example, work hard on what they're doing, they evaluate their mistake in order to them to forge their life purpose. We think that this will make other people or these people to be motivated to do the same thing, right? But second, on comparison then, with the people will feel less motivated in their side of the house because they feel like their purpose is existing anyway, right? That means they don't have to work hard, they don't have to explore, they don't have to learn from their failure because you think that you will always discover it anyway, even without trying to explore or train yourself, right? Because it's pre-assigned to you to begin with. So without motivation, on office is better in our side of the house. But lastly, right, they told you about how you will have limited choices and you're not in control, right? Two responses to this. First, I think limited choice exists on both sides of the house, right? I already told you that how these people in opposition even will still be underprivileged anyway. There will still be like different starting point and whatnot, right? We don't understand how in their side of the house, exclusively the desire and free will, for example, will exist better in their side of the house, right? Because there's still a limitation of resources, limitation of choice, limitation of freedom in their sort of house, we don't understand the comparison in opposition, right? But second, we don't think it looks like how, we don't think what happened in government is like you have to follow people or you're forced to follow other people, right? We're talking about the nurturing process that subconsciously force you to be who you are, right? The book that you read, the discussion that you listen to, of course, you can still have the rational capability to weigh whether or not you want to believe into that, the rational capability to weigh whether or not you want to make that to me like your life purpose and whatnot, right? So within our sort of house, people will still be in control. People will still have the choice to do so, right? Within commerce, it's going to be worse in their sort of house because it's a pre-existing life purpose is something that you need to discover, but it's being assigned by other entity and whatnot. So if you want to talk about choice and control, it's going to be bad in their sort of the house because these people know that this purpose is something that forced, it's not something that they choose, it's something that is being given to them. We're so proud to propose.
Thank you, Government Whip. Going to opposition Whip.
Hi, is this audible? Is this audible?
Yep, you are audible.
Gender pronouns is she or her, and disclaimer, this is, I'm so sorry if I offend anyone if I generalize something, but it is only for the debate, only for the analysis of this debate. So I hope everyone can tolerate that. Feel free to stop my speech if I get disconnected. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. The things that they always clarify in this debate is basically saying that there is this discovery is untrue because they don't know new job that different as your surrounding is worth it or not, whether it is safe for you or not, and whatsoever. You don't need to buy this frame. They only portray that it is somehow hard for the society and it is unworthy to be taken. While my first speaker and second speaker already proved to you that that it is something that accessible since the first place, right? It is something that common. It is one of your stepping stone in life, in improving your life. For example, you have capability, you have your own passions. It is only assumptive and dismissive points coming from government that we cannot do this and we cannot access this, therefore we only it is only possible for us to continue our legacy of our parents and whatsoever, right? That's why we think that we already proved to you that they have passions when they have access to that. We think that it is still accessible and it is something that can be done by this society in the very first place, right? But the second mistake, right? No exclusivity at all coming from government side of the house. For the moment they prove to you that they're going to force their surrounding, they know what is your destiny and whatsoever. They know that it is something that true, it is something that enjoyable and whatsoever, right? We question why then it is true since the first place. Why then everyone can enjoy their surrounding, for examples. Everyone have different path of life, everyone have different interests, right? If it is same by your surrounding, for example, your parents is a doctor, for example, then you wanted to be a doctor like them, for example, you have same interest, for example, that it is good for you, right? But it is different towards the vulnerable one, the one that have different interests from their surrounding, for example. We're the one that going to protect them. We're going to be justified. We're going to be the one who support and justify their discovery since the first place. You don't have to force towards your surrounding. You don't have to be a mother, a doctor like your mother, for example. It is perfectly fine for you to take your other step of life, for example, to improve your life, to achieving your dreams and whatsoever, right? It is going to be it is going to be the tipping point of oppositions, right? We're going to win this debate based on why we can fulfill and help those vulnerable stakeholders, the one who really want to out of their comfort zone, for example. We're going to appreciate all of their discovery. My first speaker already proved to you why then, even though it is failed, even though it is still bad, for example, why then it is still beneficial and contributive towards other, and why. And we already proved to you that discovery is something that good since the first place, right? Or even second, they proved to you that it is tiring. It is endless loop of trial and error and whatsoever, right? We think that it is only worst case scenario only because trial and error is something that common. But one question, why then tiring is not going to happen also under their side, right? Forging something, doing something in continuously, for example, for examples, is also something that tiring since the first place, right? There is no engagement at all towards their side. They only play on their best case scenario, their best case scenario, right? Let's take that off, even though it is going to be tired under our side. We think that the perfectly fine, because at least it is your own interest, it is your own dream since the first place. That's why it's going to be the tipping point why oppositions win this debate, right? Moving on to my clash in here, right? Talking about principally why then you should discover or not, right? Several things that they brought to you. First of all, let's talk about the principle of evolution that they brought to you since the first place, right? They prove the adaptations in life, survive in life. They are inherently forged as human and whatsoever. Let's prove why this is not true since the first place, right? We think that it is no. Firstly, because human is not only adapting then done, right? They always try to discover something new. That makes their life easier. For example, the parallel examples is technology, right? The fact that technology exists is because every human wants to make their life easier, going to be even more smooth in the future. That's why they always improving technology, always discovering new technology that able to be used by the human, right? Let's analyze your past ancestor, your grandmother, for example. Before they are adapting in this something, before they are forging in this something, for example, they need to discover it, right? For example, being a doctor, there's always someone who need to discover that helping other people is important. It needs someone who need to discover what is the tools in helping other people, and being a doctor, for example. It's already proved to you since the first place that in the evaluation of itself, discovering something is the requirements since the first place, right? When there is no discovery, they cannot survive and life, they cannot adapt since the first place, right? But even though, let's take that off, right? Even though the adaptations is forged, human are inherently forged and whatsoever, and we are neglecting those principles of evaluation. We think that it is perfectly fine, right, for you to give discovery. There is no harm at all in opting out from this principle, right? The tipping point is going to be even more good. You're going to achieving your dream, for example. You're going to achieving what you're curious about since the first place, for example, fulfilling what you actually can and whatsoever, right? That's why it's going to be good anyway under oppositions. Second things that they brought to you, right? They prove to you that it is tiring. They prove to you that we're going to believing is something that untrue, is something that unreliable and whatsoever, right? We're questioning what is exclusivity, why then forging is not tiring, right? Why then forging is not tiring since the first place? You're trying to fulfill the standard, for example. Your parents is a doctor with high salary. You are expected to be also like them, for example, while your actual capability, actual capability in is art, for examples, to at least get in preschool for educations, for examples, is already hard and stressing for you, right? To try to fulfilling the expectations from your parents, from your surrounding, for examples, it's also stressing for you and tiring for you, right? Let's compare whether it's not going to be tiring under our side. You're going to freely fulfill what you're capable about. What is your interest? What is your passion, right? You're going to enjoy that since the first place, because it is what your interest since the first place. It is going to be better under our side because at least they are enjoying in achieving and in discovering this something new, right? But tipping point, even though at worst both side is tired, right? The tipping point is under oppositions. We're going to be at least fulfilling your dreams, fulfilling our interest since the first place, right? But let's take another scenario. Even though both side is happy, why then it is it is only illusions under their side, right? Your achievement, for example, you can be a doctor, for example. It is going to be generalized by society that it is something that common. Your parents can do that. Your sisters can do that, for example. No pride at all, right? The comparison under opposition, we have this pride. You're going to have this pride in the end of the day, right? You're going to be proud with your with something that you can be discovered since the first place, right? That's why it is going to be better under our side, right? But lastly, different access, right? They prove to you that society under poverty cannot access this and whatsoever, right? Firstly is no, because we already proved to you that it is always there, right? You have capability, you have passion. That's why you're able to maximize your effort on that, for example. Exactly, under affirmative, they are going to be the one that foreverly stagnant. They expected to maintain the legacy. Affirmative exactly are the one who limit the choice of these people in the end of the day, right? No discovery at all. They're going to be fully stagnant under their side. No engagement at all coming from them, right? Or even moreover, we already proved to you that it is going to be helped by the government and whatsoever, right? Or even though at worst it is that hard, for example, we think that it is perfectly fine, right? Because at least under our side, we're enjoying discovering this. fulfilling our interest in the first place. That's why this class goes to our side, right? But second class talking about happiness, right? When they prove to you that it is endless loop of trial and error and whatsoever, we think that there is no since the first place, because there are evaluations and you're able to analyze what is wrong with your discovery. For example, so you're able to know what is your mistakes, and you're able to evaluate that and doing better in the future in order to get discover this something, for example. But even to at worst, we're going to really fail. We're going to tiring. It is going to be tiring under our side. We think that it is perfectly fine, because at least you have this discovery. You at least have contributions towards other. You have purpose of life in doing something. That's why we proud to oppose.
Thank you, Opposition Whip. To sum up the case from opposition, calling reply speaker of opposition.
Am I audible, Kak?
Yep, you are.
Starting my speech in 3, 2. This debate should go to the theme where we are able to prove that those proposed is something that are justified to do so, but how it can creating a good impact towards society. Since government team only apply in one scenario that those proposed is something that true or not, I think it's very hard for the judge to cater this argument, right? My reply speech will come into three class. First, toward the choice. Second, journey of life. Thirdly, about the contribution to society. Let's jump to the first one. Judge, might be you would like to developing the class with the choice towards society. Yes, we see that those proposed is those choice that within the society might be a deadlock, since it will be swayed by the majority or not, or it become a free will towards society. So we say that this debate should based on which team can be able to creating a good journey of life, and second, how then it creating a good contribution towards society. Those metric will be count and toward the opposition team, since opposition team have been proved to you. How then, even though it will very hard for you to success, even though it will very hard for you to proposing your interest at the very beginning, you will be able to proposing your desire at the very beginning with. But what is the comparative in that? The comparative and the biggest problem come from the government team when they're talking that every single people decision will be made by the sway come from the majority, by sway by the existence of narrative and society, will creating just an illusion of happiness that exists, right? Why is that so? Two reasons. First, the fact that your happiness exists, just only the validation come from society, means that it's not always truly your desire at the very beginning with. But second, we say it will very hard for you to proposing every single thing that creating by the society. Means that even though you have the ability, but at the end of the day, it will be something that are very tireless that exists inside of the government, right? And what is the comparative in that? In opposition type, in opposition side, we've been proved to you how the process of journey that exists inside of the opposition team. Yes, might be it will be very hard for you. Yes, might be it will never beneficial. Yes, it will. Yes, might be it will creating a lot of try and error. But at the end of the day, those failures that exist, it's become your part of journey, since you are very concerned at the very beginning, which it's become your desire to do so. So we say it's totally fine to do. But thirdly, let's talking about the contribution toward the society. Government team come and say that those proposed for the work as opposed to the those proposed before is something that are justified to do because of your contribution as a social creature, for example. But why then is something that are very harmful and problematic at the very beginning? Yes, we say even though you are a social creature, it doesn't mean it's your obligation for you to following every desire come from the majority. Means that even though you are can be able to creating a contribution, we say the contribution is just a concession come from society, not always become something that good for everyone. We say it's no longer beneficial. But what is the comparative? The comparative is in opposition will give you more free will to contribute towards society. It is easier for you to achieve some certain contribution because of it's not necessarily for you to fulfilling the standardized and access at the very beginning with. We say it can be able to advocate more people who have lack of ability or even advantage at the very beginning with, right? We say those two class should go to opposition team. For this reason, very proud to oppose.
Thank you, Reply Speaker from Opposition. To close overall debate, Government Reply Speaker.
Can we hear?
Yep.
I know the debate was quite confusing, but that was only because that side of the house decided that they want to make it confusing. I know you got tired already out of our chair example. Trust me, I also want to leave that fucking chair alone. But it's quite unfortunate that I still have to say it in the very last speech of the round. Even if you chose to buy everything offset, those are extremely secondary to the trueness of the statement, which is the burden of the debate. I think they realize that their case is fucked, hence they change the offensive of whip, providing a lot of new mechanisms, which I think is just genuinely quite ingenuine, right? Insofar as we can no longer respond to off whip. But still, I will tell you preemptively why we already destroyed all those computeries, even if you decide to credit it for some reason. Two things in this speech. Number one, which is true. Number two, which is the better narrative to believe in. On trueness, two things like we told you 6 observations. We only heard the response from like BLO and Whip. What BLO said was 2 things. Number one, people still do things on free will, and number 2, trial and error is okay. On free will, I think this is just extremely dismissive, right? Not only that this backslice off their own cake insofar as if they want to talk about minority, if it's true that minorities still have some part of free will in either side, so like it sounds to me like minorities will still have some control anyway in either side, right? So there's no clear comparative then, also unlikely to happen in their side. But secondly, when they argue about trial and error is okay because of consent, we have 3 things. Number one, sounds to me like consent is equal in both sides. This backslide to your own harm of minority because we can also claim consent, right? Because like these people also consent to opt into these kinds of courts preferences. All those are still justified. Not that it sounded like a reason. I think this is still utilitarian, but even assuming there's a reason, there's no delta. Secondly, we told you that this trial and error doesn't work. Degree of the happiness is still different, but also content in opposition. You can never meaningfully access happiness because you quit early, while pain is the prerequisite for you to gain happiness to begin with. The response we got from Obwit was that, but forging is also tiring. This is new. But the comparative is not that we are not tiring. The comparative is that we overcome pain. If we face pain, then we overcome it to get the happiness. In their side, you need to never feel happiness. Lastly, we told you that it's not true for everyone. Given the framing that you don't have access, you need to find out what's true for most people, insofar as we have to cater to the widest definition of the purpose that we ought to cater to in this debate. From Obwit, we got the idea, new argument that, but the discovery is a prerequisite for you to get like forgery, right? Trivially, if in their side no one discovers that helping others is nice, then you don't have anyone helping others, right? In our side, there's no one helping others. Society will manufacture someone to start to help others. So we win in the prerequisite debate even if we choose to credit that. Compare this to our 6 observations. We told you that it's already independent debate winning because we answered the burden. The response that we got ridiculously from our reply was that, your happiness is an illusion. We don't really care. You don't have epistemic access to say whether or not someone has an illusion or actually they're happy. Insofar as you don't have that, we earn the side of caution, give them what they think is happiness. Secondly, the wrong burden. What is the better narrative to believe in? And I want to note previously that our first touch already wins the debate a priori, insofar as we fulfill the burden that is required. 3 things that we claim in this point. The first is that I want to know that all their benefits are unfortunately contingent on them finding the purpose that they ought discover. And this is really important. We told you a lot of reasons why they're systematically unable to find their purpose to begin with. Number one, finding it is hard. You're habituated to opt out after you face certain failures. You miss the purpose because you quit too early once you face certain pain. Number two, media portrayal will always shift towards majority anyway. We have absolutely no responses whatsoever. Thirdly, discovery is endless. We have massive amount of choice. You're unclear why you can necessarily find it. But lastly, even passion from Upwip is already manufactured by social interaction to begin with. So in order for you to argue why this is, as someone is passionate to do something, you have to believe our characterization that people actually have like their passion because the society manufactured it for them. So insofar as they cannot prove why they can find their passion, all this is false. Secondly, on agency, because what we heard from that side was that you have control to discover your life purpose. 2 prerequisites for agency that we talked about. Number one, you have no symmetry of information in their side. You don't know the degree of pain and pleasure that you will face in the new purposes that you're gonna do trial and error in. But secondly, control exists when you know your purpose. In opposition, people are habituated to think that their purposes are not yet discovered and arbitrarily assigned to them. You're always doubtful of whether or not the current work that you're doing, the current purpose that you're trying to to achieve, for example, is actually your purpose that you have or have not discovered. Lastly, on improvement. The prerequisite for improving is wanting to overcome pain. You don't do that after one failure because you consider it's not your purpose in their side. You fail once, you quit. You want to discover new things. You will never find purpose. You will never find success. Don't have as our case because they stop just because of someone pursuing it. Not only that, they mistakenly define the burden as a narrative debate. Even if you want to take the utilitarian standpoint, we win substantially. Perfect.
Thank you, everyone, for the debate. That's the end for adjudicators. Yeah, should we stay here